Hello, everybody, and welcome to today's Peninsula Ireland webinar. My name is Luke Byrne. I am one of the business sales partners here with Peninsula. Essentially, my role is to kind of reach out to people like yourselves, let you know what we do, who we are, how we support small businesses and stuff like that. Today's topic is something I discuss with people every day. And it's about the WRC and how to prepare for a WRC inspection. The WRC is the Workplace Relations Commission, and at the moment they are actually rampant out doing their on-site inspections. So it's a very informative and topical webinar today that you'll definitely gain a lot of benefit from. We're joined today by my colleague Rory Dowling. He is one of our HR consultants, one of our HR experts here in Peninsula. He is likely to be on the other end of the phone when you call in and have a question about the Workplace Relations Commission. So today's webinar is all about getting to know who they are, how to prepare. We have a few polls and a few live questions as well. So for now, I'll hand you over to Rory and I'll join you back in a while. Thanks a million.
Thank you, Luke. Here, look, you're all more than welcome to today's webinar. Like my colleague was saying, my name is Rory Dowling. I'm one of the HR consultants here in Peninsula. And yeah, as Luke was saying, on a daily basis, I will be dealing with WRC complaints, letters, inspections. And my role is really to just advise and prepare my clients as much as possible for these inspections. So let's get started. So today's agenda, today we'll be discussing who the WRC are, why are they here, what are they here for, what's their role. We're going to be discussing what the inspections entail. What are they going to be looking for? Why are they coming into the business? What kind of conversations are they going to be having with your colleagues and your employees? And then lastly, we're just going to discuss basically how to prepare for situations like this. After this webinar, we want to ensure that you have a good idea of how to prepare for a situation like this so that if they do ever come into your workplace, you feel prepared and you don't feel very anxious. So to start off, who are the WRC? So the WRC, or the Workplace Relations Commission, is an independent statutory body. They're basically, they were first established on the 1st of October 2015. Their main objective, is just to ensure that companies in Ireland are fully compliant with employment law. They provide employment law advice for both employees and employers, but they also prosecute employers who have been found to have been in breach of legislation. So they are quite serious when it comes to situations like that. So we're going to be discussing what is an inspection, like what are they coming into the organization for. So an inspection is basically when an inspector from the WRC comes into your organization and basically inspects the company entirely. We can see just from kind of cases that we've had, they usually look for about 7 pieces of legislation. In Ireland at the moment, there's about 1,500 pieces of legislation that actually protect employees in Ireland. There's mainly 7 that we can see that they've looked for. Now, again, it does depend on the inspector that comes into your organization, but let's use the Organizational Working Time Act, for example. They're going to come in and they're going to be ensuring that you're fully compliant with that. How do you record your daily and weekly rest periods? Do you have a record of them? Are employees signing off on these records? Do you have evidence that you have provided these rest periods to your employees? This is the kind of information they'll be looking for. Another one could be the Terms of Employment Information Act. Do all your employees have a contract of employment? Did they receive it within the first month of their employment? Did they receive an offer letter within the first 5 days of their employment? These are written in legislation that they must provide. That employees must be provided with 10 core terms of employment within the first 5 days before their start date. And after that point, we have 1 month to issue the contract. And if we haven't done that, we're actually in breach of legislation. So this is the type of things that the WRC will be looking for. Now, a question I often get asked is, do I get notice as to when the WRC will be coming in? And in an ideal world, you may get a letter basically highlighting that the WRC has you on their sector. They're looking at your industry. They will be coming into your business. But I have come across a lot of cases where they actually just show up unannounced. They just come into your organization. They'll ask questions to your employees. They'll ask questions about the organization. They'll leave. And then you'll get a letter basically highlighting that they're going to be coming back to look for specific pieces of documentation. So, in an ideal world, you will get a bit of notice as to when they're coming in, but again, it's not set in stone that you really will get a notice. So I believe there will be a poll kind of coming onto your screen now at the moment. And the first poll we have is, have you ever received a WRC inspection before? Has a WRC inspector come into your organization and basically carried out an investigation, kind of talking to your employees, looking for specific records? The answers should be coming up on your poll now.
You mentioned something there, Rory, just in relation to the inspections in terms of like it might be sectoral. Is there do they normally target sectors? Is it normally random? How do they normally do that? I've noticed at the moment, because I'm dealing with quite a lot of mechanics, garages, car washes, a lot of them have gotten kind of inspected over the last couple of weeks, or are getting inspected. So is it a mix of the two, like, or how does it work?
Well, funny you asked. Is literally actually the next topic we're going to go on to. So, funny enough, there's really three main reasons as to why a WRC inspection will take place. As you mentioned, yeah, it can be dependent on the industry. They might just decide, okay, we're going to have a look at all retail sectors. We're going to
Okay.
go into hospitality sectors. It could be quite random. It could be random from an employer's perspective, or for the WRC, they could do it due to location. I've had cases where they've literally just gone to, let's say, Grafton Street, for example, and literally gone from business to business and inspected them. So it can be quite random sometimes from an employer perspective. But again, like you said, from the WRC perspective, they're going from industry to industry.
Okay.
Another reason, there could be a complaint. Maybe someone in your organization or someone who's been in your organization believes that you have breached legislation and they've contacted the WRC. That would be a reason as to why the WRC will come in and kind of have an inspection. And another could be actually on the back of a claim. So maybe the
Okay.
WRC actually prosecuted you. They brought you to court. They've gone through that procedure, and maybe they won. In cases like that, if they won with that employee, what's to say you haven't breached other employees in your organization? So that could be another reason as to why they come in. And when they do, it's if obviously kind of on the back of a complaint or a claim, sorry, it's usually separate. So if there is an instance or an incident with you and your employee, it's going to be separate to the inspection they have after, but it can come off a claim in situations like that.
Okay,
Uh,
so we see there from the polls anyway that 39% have had a WRC inspection, 61% have not had a WRC inspection. Now, when I'm talking to people on the phone and stuff like that, I say to them, look, they may never cross your door, okay?
yeah,
But that's kind of besides the point, because they say, look, well, if they've never come to me before, why should I bother having all this stuff in place anyway? I said, but look, it's compliance. Regardless of
yeah.
whether they come across your door, you need to have the documentation and the compliance in place, just to ensure that you're protected. So I'll let you continue on there anyway, Rory. Thanks a million.
Yeah, but honestly, yeah, Luca, on that, that's a great point to be honest, because I have talked to a lot of clients who've been working for years now and they've never heard of the WRC, and then you have a client who literally just set up a company and straight away, they get the letter and they haven't even set up shop yet. So it can vary from business to business, but again, I would just always make sure that I am prepared for these situations because again, you may never hear from them, you may hear from them right away, so you just want to make sure you are compliant just in case. So again, we're going to ask how many WRC inspections do you guys reckon happened in 2022 alone? I believe there should be three options or sorry, 2020, yeah, 2022, sorry, I thought I said 2023. But yeah, there should be three options that come up onto your screen now. Okay, perfect. I'm going to assume you guys have all locked in your answers, so we're going to move on to the next slide. So in 2022 alone, there were 5,820 inspections that took place. Out of them 5,820, there were 5,700 contraventions in legislation detected. So where there was a breach in legislation. Also in 2022, there were 87 prosecutions that resulted from an inspection, and out of that 89, the WRC won 69 of them. So they won 77.5% of the cases they brought to court last year, which is crazy. They have a very, very high winning percentage. They are experts just like ourselves when it comes to employment law, so they know what they're looking for. And in 2022 alone, I believe it was 1.4 million unpaid wages were recovered. So that could have been due to maybe not following the minimum wage. Maybe you weren't paying the appropriate public holiday entitlements. Maybe you didn't follow annual leave statutory entitlements as well. So all of this will kind of be uncovered, and the WRC will figure out whether you have or haven't been doing it correctly.
I'll
Okay,
just I'll just
of
I'll just
course, yeah,
pop back in here, Rory, for a second, just to kind of let don't know what that was. Just to let people know kind of how Peninsula can support you when it comes to the WRC. Obviously, this is all about compliance. Okay, so we want to make sure that you are ticking all your boxes and that you're doing everything by Irish legislation to ensure that you're going to pass inspections like this. Okay, so we will first of all review the WRC inspection letter. We'll have a look at your current kind of policies and procedures that you have in place. Have a look over your documentation, your contracts, your handbooks, and stuff like that, and then update them if they're out of date. Like what we kind of say to people is, particularly now because of all the legislation changes that have taken place over the last 6 to 12 months, if you haven't looked at your handbook or updated your policies within the last 6 months, you really have to do it now anyway, regardless of the Workplace Relations Commission, because that's going to protect your business and make your business run a lot more smoothly anyway. Okay. And as well, like for an example, like I was dealing with somebody last week, and they called us on a Friday, and they had a WRC inspection the following Tuesday. We were able to have somebody out with them within, it was actually, we had them out on that day. We had a look over their documents. We gave them some on the spot advice and recommendations there and then we issued them what we call a letter of competency, basically to tell them that we are currently in the works of updating all their documents. So then when the WRC that they're engaging with a company like ourselves, it shows that look, they will be up to the standard level of compliance. So reach out to us if you've had a WRC inspection, if you're having a WRC inspection. If you haven't had a WRC inspection, have that review anyway, just to ensure that you are ticking all your boxes. So look, I'll pass you back to Rory there again now.
Perfect. And one thing I just add on to that, what Luke said, like he was absolutely spot on. But if you are kind of, if there is an inspection taking place in your workplace, I would just try and, the WRC are very accommodating. They're there to help at the end of the day. So if there are things you don't have in place, just be honest with them. If you do need extra time, if you have a valid reason as to why you may need extra time to do so, let them know. They will they're here to help at the end of the day. I just wouldn't, where possible, I'd just be fully transparent with them. If you're trying to pull the wool over their eyes, it's just going to lead to more issues than anything else. But like I said, they are there to help at the end of the day. So as long as you have a valid reason as to why you may need extra time, or maybe like I've seen some cases where people have been on annual leave when they got the letter, and then they come back and they have the inspection the next day. The WRC will understand that they're there to help at the end of the day. So just be fully transparent and do as they say, and there really shouldn't be any issues. Yeah, perfect. So we're going to talk about what really happens during the inspection. Like, what are they going to be doing? Who are they going to be talking to? What are they going to be looking for? And the main thing that they're going to be doing is they're going to be looking at your documentation. So as Luke said, they're going to be looking through your policies and procedures. They want to make sure that you have the up-to-date policies and procedures, that all your policies are in line with current legislation. Like my colleague Luke was saying, there was 3 acts that came into effect this year. There was the Sick Leave Act, there was the Transparent and Predictable Working Conditions Act, and there was the Work-Life Balance Act. The Work-Life Balance Act is still coming into effect as well. There's more points that will be coming down the line. Do you have policies in place regarding these acts? Under the Code of Practice, there was an update in that in 2021 regarding bullying. Do you have a policy in relation to that? And it all has to be drafted in line with legislation as well. So these are things they're going to be looking for. They're going to be looking for records as well. So basically, they're going to be looking for records for the past 12 months before they come into the business. And that's going to be for past and present employees. So, do you have a copy of their contracts? Do you have information? Do you have their personal details? Do you have their PPS number, their home address? This is information I would keep for at least a year. Now, it's recommended to keep it for longer, but just in the cases for WRC, they're going to be looking for information for the past year. And like I mentioned, that's information from past and present employees. Another thing they're going to be doing is they're going to be conducting interviews with your employees. This is another reason why I wouldn't lie or I wouldn't try and backdate anything, because if you say one thing to the inspector and your employee says another, that's automatically a red flag in the company, and it really will cause issues down the line. That's why I fully recommend to be fully transparent with the WRC. But yeah, no, they're going to be conducting interviews with your employees. If there's a specific employee they want to talk to, or maybe a past employee they want to talk to, they could even send them out a list of questions in the post. Another question I often get asked is basically, do you get to choose who they talk to? No, you don't. The WRC pick and choose whoever they want to speak to. They'll be looking for the information that they're coming in for. Okay, perfect. So we're going to be moving on to how to prepare. What do we need to do after this to ensure that we are in line with what they're going to be looking for, so we are prepared for a WRC inspection? So as my colleague Luke was saying, just review and update your documents. Firstly, I just ensure that we do have all the retained information that we need as of employment law. So what kind of personal information do we have on employees? Is it updated? Did they move? We need to have this information. We need to have their right to work in Ireland. If we have someone who's working in the EU, do they have the appropriate work permits to be in Ireland? Do they have a PPS number? What's their home address? Emergency contacts. We need to retain this information. So I would make sure we do have that on file. Another thing that they're going to be doing is they're going to be looking for your policies and procedures. So like we mentioned, there's a few policies that need to be drafted in line with legislation, and you do need to give to your employees. For example, the disciplinary procedures, bullying, personal or sexual harassment. Like, do you have policies on these? If not, you really should. To be honest, they're going to be looking for this information. Now, look, again, like I said, they are quite accommodating. So if you don't have these in place, just let them know that you don't have it in place. They'll give you time to get them in place, and then I just make sure that you are kind of following that as well. I wouldn't kind of leave it last minute where possible, because some of these legislations can be quite significant. Sorry. Perfect. So if you haven't, again, I just make sure that all employees are issued with a statement of main terms, a contract. Like we discussed earlier on, before an employee starts, we have 5 days to provide them an offer letter from their start date. And once we do that, we have 1 month to issue them with a contract of employment. And I see it with my clients a lot. It's very easy to kind of provide someone with an offer letter, and just same with the kind of convention notice. It's very easy to kind of forget about that date and be like, okay, I can worry about that in a week or two, and then like a month and a half passes and we're in breach. And if you haven't provided someone with a contract of employment within the first month of their start date, that's 4 weeks pay the employee can claim from the company. So it may not be a lot, but for small businesses it definitely is. So just something to keep in mind. Perfect. So training management, like we mentioned, with disciplinary procedures, bullying, harassment, sexual and personal harassment, there is training that members of management do need to have if they're going to carry out that procedure, and that training is called the dignity and respect workplace training. Like I mentioned, if you're going to be carrying out a disciplinary procedure, if you're going to be carrying out a complaint on sexual harassment grievance, you need training to be able to carry this out. I've seen cases where clients have just decided not to contact us and they carried it out themselves. And even if they carried out a perfect procedure, they did everything correct, they were fair to the employee, they did everything they could. If they did not have the training, it doesn't matter at the end of the day, because they weren't in the position to carry out that process, and it's flawed. So that's an automatic loss, unfortunately, in situations like that. So if you don't have training, I would try and make sure that some members of management do have that training. Okay, perfect. So the next poll is just if you were to have a WRC inspection today, are you prepared? I feel like today, with the conversation that we have, you have a good idea of kind of what you need to get in place after. So I would believe that kind of after today's video or webinar, you would have an understanding of what we need to get in place. But right now, do you think you have everything you need to kind of make sure that you can carry this out?
And again, just to reiterate as well, I think, Rory, like if people haven't really looked at the likes of their handbooks, their contracts within the last 6 months, really now's the time to do it.
Mm,
And I wouldn't say that they would be prepared if they haven't, because with the amount of legislation changes, the WRC like to see that you're on top of these things. And as well, look, if you haven't looked at your documents in the last 6 to 12 months, if you have any questions about the WRC, if you're in line for a WRC inspection, absolutely reach out to us, because we offer everybody here a complimentary review of their policies, of their procedures, of their documentation, to anybody who attended the webinar. So definitely worth your while having a look at that. And look, 41% are saying no, I need to go out and look at my documentation. So the 41% of you, let us help you with that. Okay, we'll be getting in touch with everybody after the webinar anyway. We love to get feedback and stuff like that. So when we reach out, take that consultation. We'll have a look at your policies. We'll have a look at your procedures. We'll put forward some advice and recommendations for you. I always say, look, if something's not going to cost me anything and it's going to benefit the business, you'd be mad not to take it. Okay, so definitely let us give you a dig out with that. We have a couple of upcoming events as well over the next few days, and over the next few weeks even. You'll see them there on your screen. So they're covering a wide variety of different topics, from workforce diversity, family-friendly employment, employee rights, the do's and don'ts of employing seasonal staff. Obviously, we're coming up to the Christmas period, onboarding essentials, and so on and so forth. So definitely, I think my colleague Naomi has put them into the chat box there. So definitely register yourselves to them. Rory, we just have a few questions as well that were submitted just in relation to the WRC. So I might ask you a few of them now if you don't mind.
Of course, of
Um,
course.
so let me see. What documents and records do they inspect?
So again, I think we discussed this a little bit, but again, we can always add more in there. So, we mentioned today already, they're going to be looking through your policies and procedures, making sure you've updated policies in line with legislation. They're going to be looking for records of employee contracts, like we mentioned, past and present. It doesn't matter if they're in the business or not. It's anyone who's been in the business in the last 12 months before the date they come in. Other things they'll be looking for, off the top of my head, they'll be making sure that you have been providing payments for public holiday entitlements,
Okay.
what kind of records do you have for that? Annual leave requests. Do you have kind of a system in place that kind of provide that kind of records annual leave requests?
Yeah.
Do you have evidence that they did take that time off? Do you have evidence that you paid them for that time off? This is a lot. I know it's a lot of information, but these are the kind of things they're going to be looking for.
Okay, this is something that I hear all the time when I'm talking to people. If there is an aspect that is non-compliant, does the WRC give a chance to rectify the issue before fining the company?
Again, it really depends on the situation. So, of course, if there's kind of like I'd always see it, especially kind of with contracts. I always see it. Now, look, this is my opinion. Again, it does depend on the inspector.
Yeah.
But I've seen a lot. If you haven't provided someone with a contract in situations like that, they do give you time to kind of get that done. Like I said, they're there to help at the end of the day. They just want to
Yeah.
ensure that you're in line with legislation, and as long as you're playing ball with them, there's no issues at all. But if
Hmm.
we're in cases where you haven't been following minimum wage, so let's say you're paying someone below 11.30 an hour and they notice that, 100% that's a fine right away, and they're going to make
Okay.
sure that you pay that employee back. But again, it depends on the situation sometimes, and even it can depend on the inspector themselves. Some
Yeah.
people can
Yeah.
be a bit accommodating, they can help. Others will take well, but they won't really take kind of any of your opinions or your
Hmm.
excuses. They're just going to straight away fine. But like I was saying, with the contracts, I don't want to mean to kind of keep going on about this one, but yeah, with the contracts, like I said, I've seen cases though where they have actually kind of gone to the employee and let them know, here, look, you haven't been given your contract within the first 4 weeks of employment. You could actually get a month's wages for that. If you make a claim, if you need a claim, you
Okay.
can come to us. So it
I
can be
get you.
cases like that. That could be the fine in that case, where they're just making sure that the employee gets the compensation
Right.
for the company not following legislation. But again, it depends on the inspector themselves.
Yeah, as you said there, because what I've noticed sometimes is now, as you said, it varies from case to case, I think. But I think, say, if the likes of contracts and stuff aren't in place, I've seen that they might give them maybe a week, 2 weeks
Mhm.
to rectify the issue. That's when a lot of the time people get in touch with us because, look, employment law is obviously a very specialized subject. Not everybody is well versed in employment law, so they're going to need to reach out to people like us to get their documentation in place. But then after the 2 weeks, then say, if they haven't got anything in place, then they might consider maybe issuing the fines and stuff like that. Now, it does depend on the inspector, depends on the business, depends on a lot of different circumstances, as
Mhm.
well as I mentioned earlier on. Like, if there is an upcoming WRC case and you find you might be lacking in a few things, we can issue you with that letter of competency, basically saying that, look, you're engaging with us and that we can kind of get you sorted for all of that stuff. And when the WRC see that, they're a lot of the time they're happy out. So do get in touch with us with any questions in relation to that. Um, a lot of these questions are quite repetitive. Let me just see. Sure. You've kind of answered most of these now, Rory. To be honest, in the slides. Here's one here that's kind of, well, a little bit different. What is the acceptable format of retention of information if your office is paperless?
Again, there's no really kind of acceptable format, as long as you have a copy of it. Like I've seen people so let's say annual leave requests in cases like that. I've seen WhatsApp messages that could be used as a
Okay.
request form. It's just you do need to have a record of it. It could be
Yeah.
the simplest form. It could be like, so I think they mentioned they're paperless. It could just be a sheet of paper that they fill out being like, I want to take today and tomorrow off, accept or declined, just you just need a record of it. So like like Luke, yourself, like we have a service that we provide called Bright
Yeah.
HR,
Right.
and
HR. Absolutely.
yeah, it's amazing for situations like that, and you don't even have to worry about it, to be honest, because it records their annual leave entitlement, it records when they took it, when they didn't take it, how much they have left. So it does all that for you. Like there are a lot of apps out there as well that would do it for you. But
Mm,
yeah, no, like I mentioned, just as long as you have some form of record of it, it could be as simple as an email. It could be as simple as an email or a WhatsApp message, just basically saying, "Can I take this day off?" Yes. Screenshot that. That's a record that they requested that time off, and then they could look through your pay slips to ensure that there was a difference in pay that time, or that there wasn't a gap in pay. So like, let's say you're working Monday to Friday and they took Tuesday and Wednesday off. If they're paid
yeah.
for the full week, you can show them that they were paid full entitlement, but they requested them 2 days off. So that's record enough there. But
Okay.
again, just it could be any form. You just need to have a record of it.
Okay. There's a few audience questions after being submitted here live there.
Perfect, perfect.
Let me just see about these ones. Regarding keeping records, how long do you need to keep records before it's a GDPR breach?
Ooh, okay. Now, when it comes to GDPR, that wouldn't really be my area of
Okay.
expertise. But from an employment law standpoint, it really depends on the information.
Right.
From a WRC perspective, I would always say just keep it for a year, just to be safe. But then there are specific bits of information that you actually may need to keep for longer. I think it comes to the personal information. I could be wrong now. Maybe double check.
Okay.
If you could pass me on the email of the lady who sent that or the gentleman who sent that, I
Absolutely.
can I can get that information across to them.
Perfect stuff. Now you've kind of touched on this one, but it's another live audience question, so I'll
Oh,
just ask you
perfect,
anyway.
perfect.
So they've asked, do you need to keep timesheet records? We do daily WhatsApp hours.
Yeah, again, that's fine. With the hours of work, as long as there's a record of it, and as
Mhm.
long as the employee confirms that they did work them hours. So whether if you kind of send a WhatsApp message out and just be like, so these are the hours of work this week, just clock, and then even for rest periods as well, that could be another way of kind of recording rest periods. Just
Yeah.
as long as there's a record of it, you just need records. Like mentioned, the only thing they're going to be looking for is documentation or records, but how you record that information can vary from business to business. It
Yeah.
depends. Like, you might get a large organization that has a very kind of thorough way of doing it, and then you may kind of have a small organization, a small business, a coffee shop that basically just like
That's what
WhatsApp
I was
message
gonna
comes up,
say. Yeah.
WhatsApp message comes down. Like that's
That
that's me clocking in and out.
that's what that message seems like. That seems like kind of now it could be completely wrong, but I would say that's probably a smaller business,
Hmm.
quite a close knit business,
No, definitely.
friends, family, so they're quite comfortable with just recording everything on WhatsApp there. The only thing is, say, what if there was somebody off that day? The WRC come in, show me your hours. They don't have access to their phone at the time. You're
Hmm.
better off using some sort of platform where you do have some sort of backup, the likes of Bright HR recording the hours and stuff like that. That's easily accessible, or
Yeah.
even maybe paper timesheets may be better than that WhatsApp as well, just to have some sort of backup, just to kind of keep you
Hmm.
that little bit more on top of things. Um, but look, I'll ask you one more there, Rory. As I said, a lot of them are kind of the same, and a lot of them you have kind of covered already. But look, we've had a few more
Oh, perfect.
additions, so
Okay.
we have a few more additions to the webinar. So some people mightn't have heard this one at the start.
Oh,
Does an
perfect.
employer receive notice of a WRC visit?
Again, in an ideal world, yes. In an
Yeah,
ideal world, yes. But again, that's not always the case. There are a lot of times where they do just show up unannounced. They let you know that they're with the WRC, and they just kind of start kind of going through, kind of asking people questions, asking questions about the company. Usually, now again, it depends on the inspector. Usually, if they do kind of come in unannounced, that's not really the time when they're going to be looking for the documentation. That's when they're going to be hosting the interviews. That's when they're going to be talking to the employees. They're going to be talking to yourselves. They're going to make sure that the information they get from both is consistent, is the same. And then what they usually do after that point is they'll send you a letter confirming the date that they'll be coming back for the documentation. Then, now it is quite a long process. So if they are doing it all in the one day, do be patient with them. It does take a lot of time. They do carry out their work quite slowly. They want to make sure that they're
yeah,
happy with
very
that.
thorough.
Very thorough, yeah,
Yeah,
100%. And look, guys, the main thing I'd say anyway with WRC is they are there to help. They're like they can be very intimidating. They can be and they can definitely kind of penalize someone for if you're not following what they say. But as
okay,
long as you do exactly what they say, there shouldn't be any issues. And like we mentioned, like my colleague mentioned, there could be cases where we have clients who literally sign up with us the next day they have the inspection, but we
yeah.
have that letter to basically let the WRC know that look, they're in our hands now. We're in the process of drafting the documentation. It will be in line with legislation. And usually in cases like that where it's shown that you are making a conscious effort to do exactly what they say, 90% of the time you're perfectly fine. But again,
Okay.
it can depend on the inspector. But from what my experience anyway, I've never seen an issue arise from kind of just doing what they're saying. There's never really an issue like
Okay.
that. And like I said, they're quite accommodating. So if you do need to push it back, and you have a valid reason as to why, they're usually more than happy to kind of to accommodate them situations.
Okay. Another question that was just submitted there literally a second ago, and I think
Perfect.
this is something that a lot of people aren't aware of, because when I explain this particular thing to people, a lot of people are shocked that it actually happens. It's around asking the staff questions. Okay.
Mm.
So this audience member is wondering, what questions would they ask staff?
Again, that could also vary on the inspector. Straight off the bottom of my straight off my head, I could think of, were you issued a contract within the first month of your employment? If not, were you provided with an offer letter? Did you get your core terms within the first month of within the first 5 days of employment? How does your employer record hours of work? It's all to do with the documentation and the recording of hours, and this is why I would be transparent with them, because I've seen cases where someone has they've asked me, oh, can we backdate documents? Can we say that we provided this on that date and this on that date? And like, I can understand why you'd want to do that, but no, I just don't even go down that road, because even if you are kind of close with your employees, they're going to be honest with the WRC. The WRC are going to be telling them, like, we're here to help at the end of the day. We want to make sure that your company's in line with legislation. Answer these questions, and we'll know whether or not they are or they aren't. So the questions can vary, but it's usually to do with kind of documentation, recording of hours of work, annual leave. What's your annual leave entitlement? What did you get for your public holiday? For the last public holiday, did you work on it? Did you get paid for it? Did you get the day off? What was the entitlement that they gave you? And it's simple questions like that. But again, they could cause larger issues if they're not consistent.
Perfect stuff. And then the final question that was just submitted there while you were explaining that, Rory, we
Perfect.
don't record application of time off, but we do on the pay slips. Is this acceptable?
I would try and have some sort of record where the employee has kind of asked for them hours. Like, it's quite easy to kind of have a verbal conversation with an employee, but it's very easy for an employee to come back then and be like, oh, I didn't have that conversation. And if you don't have a record of saying that,
Yeah.
it happened, then the WRC is always going to be in the side of the employee, even when there's claims or there's prosecutions. The onus is always on the employer. So it can be quite easy to kind of be like, look, we don't record kind of annual leave requests, or we don't record when the employee actually takes that time off. Where possible, I would like now pay slips again. That would be one of the records of that you can use to kind of provide that you
Mhm.
did pay them employees for that time off. But again, just I'd make sure you have a request from the employee. Everything kind of revolves around the employee. So like hours of work, for an example, they have to sign off on the fact that they worked them hours and they did take them breaks. It's very easy to kind of write in, oh yeah, no, they worked Monday to Friday and they took their lunch between 1 and 2. But they
Yeah.
actually, if the employee didn't agree to that, what evidence is it that they actually did? So we
Mhm.
do need to get the employees kind of signing off on that information, whether that's on a record, whether that's on WhatsApp piece of paper. We just need to make sure we do have a record of that information where possible.
Perfect. Lovely stuff. So at the end of this webinar, I'm pretty sure there's a question asked, if you would like a complimentary consultation. Whoever asked a question there, click yes, okay, because it's definitely worth talking to us, okay. We're going to reach out anyway, so be by your phones. You're going to get a call from us, and we're going to offer you that consultation. And I'm telling you now, be worth your while taking it, okay, because look, it doesn't cost you anything, and it's going to be beneficial because we can point out any gaps, and we can give you some advice and recommendations on your policies and stuff like that. As Rory said, just with that last question, um, although you are recording the time off in some way, you're better off keeping it separate from your payslip. So it's even something as small as that we can kind of advise you on. That, I think, wraps us up. There is a few more questions there, but as I said, they're very repetitive. Like we've answered them all basically, Rory. So I think we will kind of head off now. Register for those upcoming webinars. They're all very topical, very apt at the moment. And look, as I said, we'll be reaching out for some feedback and stuff like that. But until the next time, thank you very much for joining us.
Thank you all for coming today.